It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men.
In the mid-1980s, child welfare services in Hillsborough County existed as they had for decades. There was some government help and a few nonprofit organizations. And while some provided excellent programs, there was no overall county-wide strategy on how to protect and nurture children. Certainly no central funding agency, and little, if any, outreach. In short, no way to effectively identify and meet the needs of Hillsborough County children and their families, regardless of who they were or where they lived. That was about to change. Dependency Court Judge Catherine Essrig and former school board member Doretha Edgecombe remember what child services were like in Hillsborough County prior to the creation of the Children's Board.
Very fragmented, limited in some ways, with a lot of gaps where there was not a continuity of services or a lot of collaboration in getting things done. I think that maybe groups came momentarily, and maybe they came at a time and period when there was an issue, but there was no plan, no real in-depth plan that says, this is how we're going to serve children in this community.
A solution had been available for years. State law allowed counties to use ad valorem taxes to fund child services. But few counties in Florida had taken advantage of the law. An exception was Pinellas County, where the Juvenile Welfare Board had existed since the 1940s. Using Pinellas as a model, a group of Hillsborough parents, educators, business leaders, and child advocates decided it was time to act. They petitioned the county commission to put a ballot measure to referendum on the October 1988 ballot, creating a children's board for Hillsborough County. The commission agreed, but it was not unanimous, nor was there overwhelming support among the voters.
Well, just the whole idea of using ad valorem tax dollars in this way, and having the oversight, having a group of people from designated positions in our community overseeing that process and doing so in a very strategic way.
A group of women took the lead in the campaign to convince voters. Child advocate Colleen Beavis, school board member Marion Rogers, civic leader Ann Murphy, and county commissioner Jan Platt. But they were not alone.
There were a lot of us knocking on doors, and particularly a lot of agency people. The Children's Home, the Child Abuse Council, YMCA, they were all heavily involved in trying to get the voters' attention to children's issues.
It doesn't seem, when looking back at now that we know what we know and we do things the way we do things today, it doesn't seem like it was all that novel an approach, but it was in its day.
Roughly 50% of the people were saying, wrong time to do this, as opposed to roughly 50% saying, yeah, but it's really a critical time to go in this direction.
I still remember hanging around on election day wondering, had we gotten the message across?
They had. The referendum passed, but it was close, and the hard work was not over. Over the next 2 years, a county-wide needs assessment was developed, and 13 issues were identified. Toward the end of 1990, the Children's Board released about $3 million, targeting 9 of the 13 critical areas. 30 years later, the board now invests approximately $40 million, funding to support the children and families of Hillsborough County.
There's over 200,000 kids that received services just last year through our providers. So if there wasn't a Children's Board, I would hate to think what would happen to those kids and what their lives would actually be like.
Early childhood development has long been a top priority.
We've learned a lot in the last 30 years. We know that prenatal care is incredibly important, both for the expectant mother as well as for the developing fetus. We know that the most rapid development in the brain occurs between birth and age 3. We know that young children, if they do not have a stable and loving and secure attachment with a caregiver, are most likely going to have difficult relationships for the rest of their lives. And we also know that third graders, if they're not reading on grade level, are going to struggle to keep up with their peers for many years to come.
The concept of preventing problems rather than reacting to a crisis is at the heart of the Children's Board investment in the community and its partners.
The 4 funding priorities for the Children's Board are: children are developmentally on track, they're ready to learn, they're in safe and stable homes, and they are themselves healthy and safe.
Programs funded by the board range from prenatal supports to programs for new dads, from water safety lessons to homeless family intervention, and helping students succeed in school. From the beginning, the board has encouraged its partners to be creative and to look for innovative solutions. Funding streams are determined by community needs.
One of the things that I liked that we did as a children's board was periodically go to the community and actually ask, what do you think the issues are, instead of 10 people sitting up there with staff trying to make sure we were out ahead of any issues or problems that would come up.
Community feedback from a town hall meeting in Waimama identified an urgent need for licensed child care services in the area. Working with the neighborhood organization Enterprising Latinas, the Children's Board funded a novel program that both addressed the problem and provided an economic opportunity for local residents.
So what we've ended up doing is creating a training program that helps those women that have both an interest, a passion for early childhood development and education, and train them to be educators of children by becoming licensed family child care providers. We just helped to launch the first family child care home that came out of this training and development process that we put in place with the funding that we received from the Children's Board.
Listening to the community and being proactive helped the board respond rapidly to unforeseen events.
Most recently, with Hurricane Maria, we were able to fund the emergency projects to help people coming from Puerto Rico and other islands to Florida, and we responded real time.
Other important sources of identifying community needs are the Children's Board Family Resource Centers, located strategically throughout the county. The Family Resource Centers make it easier for families to identify community supports and referrals.
You don't have to come all the way into Tampa to the office to get services. They're all over the place now.
Just as the board does its best to be responsive to children and families in need, it is also accountable to taxpayers. In the early to mid-2000s, the board tightened its reporting policies to ensure the funded partners were operating in the most efficient and effective way possible.
And for those that didn't, this was the hard part. We redirected resources to those that demonstrate the ability to initiate and to be sustainable over time. That was a change that David and I and other members of the board brought in the middle of the 30 years.
And that was painful, but I think that change improved the agencies. It improved their performance. It sharpened them up in terms of having to prove what they were doing was effective.
I think that the Children's Board operates from a perspective that it can always learn and it can always improve, and that's its intent, again, to make sure that are we doing things the most efficient way possible? Are we being the most effective? So we evaluate ourselves as much as we evaluate and monitor the programs that we fund.
That monitoring includes on-site visits, ongoing training, performance matrices, and evaluation. The numbers are very important, but they're not the only measure.
The Children's Board assesses the needs of the community, first by listening, of course, and getting feedback from people in the community through our service provider agencies. Also by doing research, and then, of course, specifically through a lot of data. One of the things that I know the staff spends a lot of time doing is analyzing numbers to make sure that we're getting the outcomes that we expect to get when we fund an agency.
And I think one of the things the Children's Board has done such a beautiful job of doing is to not only provide that leg up or that helping hand, but to show that there's no shame in asking for it or in taking it. And that's a wonderful thing for people to be able to feel comfortable in saying, I could use a little help. I can't do this on my own, or maybe I can, but I don't know how.
Nelda Goodgames turned to the Children's Board when she became one of the caregivers for her 3-year-old granddaughter Lila. Together, they attended programs to improve her motor skills, to get Lila ready to read and even to count to 10 in Spanish.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh my goodness, high five.
Lila now reads at a 5-year-old level and has been given the opportunity to excel in school.
But that program made a big difference in my life, and I'm college educated. So it's things that we still didn't know. Good example, tiptoe walking backwards. Oh my goodness, I'd never heard of mid-crossing, where you take a toy and you go back and forth, left to right. That gets them ready for reading. I didn't even know that. Thank you, Lila. So we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, seriously. And I said I wasn't gonna shed a tear. But talking about the program is very important to me. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Sometimes it's not a specific program, but the spirit of the Children's Board that helps a family.
And so I never thought that I would personally benefit, other than the feeling of helping the community, that my family would benefit by my involvement with the Children's Board. As a result of that, we went down a path of better understanding what issues one of my children had, my daughter, my youngest, and we were able to better understand why she was behaving the way that she was. And most importantly, we went down the path of getting her the appropriate treatment and giving her the education and awareness. We were able to work with her, and she was able to resume her life, and she's thriving now. It's something she'll have to continue to work with, but I shudder to think what would have happened had I not had the resources or the relationships where I could talk to folks and get help. And really that's what the Children's Board is all about.
Looking ahead, there will be more challenges. An increasing population, no doubt, means more children, more families who need help. There's also the possibility that reduced tax rates will mean less money available to assist them. But if the past 30 years are any indication, the Children's Board will be there, advocating, protecting, and providing for the children and families of Hillsborough County.
It's probably the best investment that Hillsborough County taxpayers can make because we're investing in our children.
Well, I've had an opportunity to answer the question of why do we tax ourselves for the Children's Board. The same reason we tax ourselves for the school district. These are our most important resources, our most precious resources. If you don't invest in children, you've missed the whole point of being in a community.
It's been life-changing for kids in this county in the past 30 years.
Would we survive as a community without it? Of course, we survived for a long time without it. Would we be able to have the same impact on these families and to strategically come up with ways of really providing these supports that are evidence-based and that we know work and that have proven success? Absolutely not.
No, you did a smart thing. Families are getting some of the best support because smart decisions were made at multiple levels in partnerships like this to do the right thing. I have never budged for a moment, not a moment. The absolute importance of this community's great luck for all of the really good stuff we get in Hillsborough County because of this community's commitment to this organization.
From the people of Hillsborough County to the board, executives, staff, and partners of the Children's Board, thank you for 30 years of innovative, inspiring, and life-changing service to our children and families.